Superheroes may stand for justice, but their cartoons? They've often been at the center of chaos. Parents wrote angry letters, networks panicked, and fans fought over what was appropriate. Some shows were called too dark for kids, others too silly for grown-ups, and some simply challenged the rules of what a hero could be. But here's the big question. What happens when the very cartoons meant to inspire young viewers end up sparking national debates? Let's dive into 15 superhero cartoons that turned the TV world upside down. Batman, the animated series, 1992 to 1995. It's almost impossible to imagine controversy swirling around a show as iconic as Batman, the animated series. But when it premiered in 1992, parents weren't ready for what they saw. This wasn't a colorful, cheerful caped crusader cracking campy one-liners. Instead, kids tuned in to find a brooding Batman lurking in shadows, dealing with psychological trauma and battling villains with eerie undertones. The art style was moody, the music was closer to a noir film score, and the stories often ended without a neatly tied bow. One of the most famous controversies came from the introduction of Harley Quinn. Originally created for the show, Harley wasn't your average comic relief. She was complex, unpredictable, and deeply tied to the Joker, and her presence left parents questioning if this was really kids' fare. On top of that, censors kept butting heads with the producers. Gunplay, explosions, and darker themes were constantly trimmed down to keep the show on air. And yet, this was exactly why it became beloved. For the first time, a superhero cartoon dared to treat its audience like they were smart enough to handle complexity. It made Batman relevant again for a generation raised on Saturday morning cartoons. The show proved controversy can be a blessing in disguise, because decades later, it's still regarded as the gold standard of superhero animation. X-Men, the animated series, 1992 to 1997. Few cartoons wore their message as boldly as X-Men, the animated series. From its very first episodes, it wasn't shy about being more than a superhero punch-up. It leaned heavily into social allegory, with mutants standing in for marginalized groups. Themes of discrimination, exclusion, and acceptance ran through nearly every story arc. For fans, this was revolutionary. For some parents and critics, it was too political for kids' Saturday mornings. Censors also had a field day with the action. X-Men villains and heroes were constantly blasting away with high-tech beams and powers, but the network enforced strict rules on how intense those battles could be. Even the word "die" was often banned, leading to creative workarounds where characters would say "destroyed" or "eliminated." Yet, somehow, the writers managed to sneak in storylines about government oppression, segregation, and identity. The series also didn't shy away from emotional weight. The infamous Dark Phoenix saga took on themes of power, loss, and consequence that some argued were far too heavy for younger audiences. But those risks made it unforgettable. For many viewers, X-Men wasn't just a cartoon. It was their first exposure to the idea that storytelling could reflect real struggles. The controversy only cemented its place as one of the most daring animated shows of the 1990s. Teen Titans 2003 to 2006. When Teen Titans first hit Cartoon Network, it wasn't what fans expected. Instead of sticking to the more serious style of Batman or Superman, it leaned into anime-inspired visuals, slapstick humor, and sudden tonal shifts. One minute, the characters were cracking jokes. The next, they were in high-stakes battles with villains like Slade. This combination made some adults uneasy. Was it too goofy for older comic fans? Too dark for kids? The show's willingness to explore complicated themes added fuel to the fire. Story arcs touched on betrayal, fear, and identity. while character designs leaned heavily into expressive, exaggerated styles that critics claimed clashed with the subject matter. Meanwhile, fans split right down the middle. Some adored its bold experimentation, while others felt betrayed that their beloved Titans were being cartoonified. Then came the infamous finale, which didn't resolve all storylines and left fans in uproar. Instead of closure, the last episodes offered ambiguity and emotional tension, sparking debates that still echo online today. Despite the pushback, the controversy helped Teen Titans carve out a unique legacy. It wasn't just another superhero cartoon, it became the bridge between American and Japanese animation styles, and a cult classic in its own right. Teen Titans Go! 2013 to present. If Teen Titans was controversial, its follow-up, Teen Titans Go! Turned that controversy into gasoline on a fire. Fans of the original show were stunned when Cartoon Network introduced a reboot that was pure comedy, with chibi-like designs and episodes centered around pizza parties, couch gags, and over-the-top randomness. Gone were the layered arcs and dark undertones. In their place, endless parody, musical numbers, and self-aware jokes. The backlash was immediate. Fans flooded forums complaining the reboot mocked the original series. Parents chimed in too, some arguing the humor was nonsensical, while others defended it as lighthearted fun. To make things even more heated, the creators of Teen Titans Go! Often directly addressed this criticism in episodes, poking fun at angry fans by breaking the fourth wall. That only made the debates louder. But here's the twist. The show thrived. Its popularity among younger viewers turned it into one of Cartoon Network's longest-running hits, spawning a theatrical film and endless merchandising. Controversial? Absolutely. But Teen Titans Go! Proved that sometimes irritating your most vocal critics can actually lead to even bigger success. Spider-Man, the animated series, 1994 to 1998. At first glance, Spider-Man. The animated series looked like a straightforward hit. It had crisp animation, a likable lead, and one of the best theme songs of the decade. But behind the scenes, controversy boiled constantly, mostly thanks to network restrictions. Fox censors were notorious for their rules, and Spider-Man felt it the hardest. No one could show realistic firearms, no broken glass could be depicted, and the word blood was practically forbidden. Even when characters were injured, the damage had to be implied instead of shown. Writers had to invent creative loopholes. That's why Spider-Man never really punched anyone directly on screen. He often resorted to webbing enemies or hurling them across the frame. Even iconic storylines like the Clone Saga were toned down to fit network rules, frustrating longtime fans who wanted authenticity. Adding to the controversy was the show's abrupt ending. After 5 seasons, it concluded on a cliffhanger, with Mary Jane's fate unresolved. Fans were outraged, and rumors swirled that network politics and constant censorship battles played a huge role in its cancellation. Despite those problems, the show remains a 90s gem, proving that even controversy and creative restraints couldn't stop Spider-Man from swinging into the hearts of millions. Static Shock 2000 to 2004. If there was ever a cartoon that dared to step outside the superhero comfort zone, it was Static Shock. On the surface, it looked like another Saturday morning adventure with a young hero discovering his powers. But dig a little deeper, and you realize the show tackled issues no other cartoon of its time would touch. Racism, bullying, gun violence, and even episodes about disability, Static Shock pulled no punches. This made it groundbreaking, but also incredibly controversial. Some parents and watchdog groups argued these real-world problems were too heavy for children's television. Networks often debated whether to even air certain episodes, fearing backlash. One of the most debated episodes centered around a school shooting plotline. Instead of sanitizing it, the show chose to confront the issue, showing the consequences of fear and anger while still delivering hope. It was bold, raw, and very different from the usual sanitized hero stories. The controversy didn't stop there. The show's focus on a black teen superhero, Virgil Hawkins, was revolutionary, but it also highlighted how rare that representation was at the time. Some networks didn't push the show as hard as others, sparking further debate about diversity in media. Despite these hurdles, Static Shock built a legacy. Its willingness to confront reality gave kids more than just escapism. It gave them a hero who understood their struggles. The Powerpuff Girls, 1998 to 2005. On paper, the Powerpuff Girls looked like harmless fun. 3 kindergarten-aged girls with superpowers saving Townsville from goofy villains. But the moment it hit screens, the controversy began. Parents questioned whether the slapstick action was too violent for children, pointing out that Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup often used fists, lasers, and explosions to stop their enemies. Was it empowering or too much? Then came the deeper debates. Critics argued the show's combination of cutesy animation and surprising intensity created mixed messages. Episodes would go from silly humor to darker themes in the blink of an eye, leaving adults divided on whether it was truly for kids. Add to that the fact that villains like Mojo Jojo and him were bizarre, over the top, and sometimes frightening, and you had a recipe for endless complaints. Yet, the controversy made the show even bigger. The idea of young girls as powerful, independent heroes was revolutionary for its time. Instead of waiting for someone else to save the day, they saved themselves, and everyone else. Even the backlash didn't stop Cartoon Network from pushing the series into 6 seasons, a theatrical movie, and merchandise that dominated the early 2000s. Love it or hate it, the Powerpuff Girls proved that superhero cartoons could be sugar, spice, and not so nice all at once. Batman Beyond, 1999 to 2001. When Warner Brothers announced a futuristic Batman cartoon, fans were skeptical. Could anything live up to Batman? The animated series? The answer was yes, but not without controversy. Batman Beyond introduced Terry McGinnis, a teenager who takes up the mantle of Batman under the mentorship of an aging Bruce Wayne. But instead of Gotham's gothic atmosphere, this was a cyberpunk nightmare filled with neon skyscrapers, urban decay, and villains that felt ripped straight from horror films. The darker tone worried parents. Critics argued it was too bleak for young viewers, pointing out episodes that tackled corruption, greed, and corporate exploitation. Terry wasn't a clean-cut hero either. He was a rebellious teen with flaws, constantly pushing against Bruce's strict rules. The show wasn't afraid to depict a Gotham where hope was scarce, and the lines between hero and villain blurred. Censors often stepped in, demanding edits for anything deemed too disturbing. Despite these hurdles, Batman Beyond quickly built a following. For many, it was the perfect evolution of Batman, edgier, riskier, and willing to ask whether a hero could truly change a broken future. The controversy didn't weaken its impact. It amplified it, cementing Batman Beyond as one of the boldest experiments in superhero animation. Super Friends 1973 to 1986. Believe it or not, Super Friends, the lighthearted DC team-up show that introduced generations to Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, was controversial in its own way. Unlike darker superhero shows that were criticized for being too intense, Super Friends faced the opposite complaint. It was too safe, too sanitized, and too censored. Parents and networks didn't want children exposed to gritty violence, so the Justice League's battles often looked more like slapstick comedies. Enemies weren't defeated with brawls, they were tricked, trapped, or talked down. Villains often came across as bumbling, and serious conflict was avoided at all costs. This didn't sit well with hardcore comic fans, who saw it as a betrayal of the source material. For them, the Justice League should be powerful, world-saving icons, not superheroes politely asking criminals to stop. The controversy grew stronger when critics accused the show of being more of a toy commercial than a true adaptation. Yet, despite all the complaints, Super Friends ran for over a decade, becoming many kids' first introduction to DC superheroes. Its reputation today is complicated, dismissed as cheesy by some, but remembered fondly as a nostalgic classic by others. In the end, it showed that even being too nice can stir controversy in the world of superheroes. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, 1983 to 1985. If there was one superhero-inspired cartoon that shook the 80s, it was He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. Every afternoon, kids across the world tuned in to watch Prince Adam transform into He-Man, battling Skeletor in Eternia. But behind the catchphrases and toy commercials, controversy brewed. Critics accused the show of being little more than a half-hour advertisement for toys, arguing that it blurred the line between entertainment and marketing. Parents worried that children were being manipulated into consumerism. On top of that, the fantastical elements, sorcery, castles, and magical powers sparked debates about whether it was too strange or frightening for younger viewers. And yet, the show's popularity was undeniable. It became a cultural phenomenon, dominating toy shelves, launching spin-offs, and embedding itself into 80s pop culture. The controversy only made it more notorious. For every critic who dismissed it as shallow, a fan stood up to celebrate its creativity and campy charm. Today, He-Man is remembered not only for its iconic characters, but also for being one of the most hotly debated cartoons of its era. Sometimes, controversy is the very thing that keeps a show alive in memory. She-Ra, Princess of Power, 1985 to 1986. When She-Ra, Princess of Power debuted, it looked like a natural counterpart to He-Man, a magical sword, a hidden identity, and a fight against an evil empire. It was the same formula, but with a female lead. That alone sparked debate. On one side, critics accused the show of simply being a toy-driven cash grab with glitter and horses. On the other, it was hailed as groundbreaking for finally giving girls a superhero of their own. The controversy deepened as parents and pundits debated whether the show leaned too hard into gender stereotypes. Some argued She-Ra's glamorous design and pastel colors reinforced outdated expectations of femininity, while fans defended her as a warrior who stood toe-to-toe with He-Man. Episodes often swung between light-hearted adventures and darker storylines about rebellion and oppression, which confused networks unsure of its target audience. Despite the debates, She-Ra became a cultural touchstone. It built a fan base that stretched well beyond its original run, eventually sparking multiple reboots decades later. The controversy didn't sink it. It made it unforgettable. For every critic who dismissed it as fluff, there were kids who grew up seeing a strong female hero for the first time and felt empowered because of it. Silver Surfer, 1998. Marvel's Silver Surfer cartoon is often remembered less for its short run and more for the storm it created. The show dared to take on cosmic-scale storytelling, delving into philosophical questions about power, freedom, and destiny. But it quickly ran into trouble. Networks worried that its themes were too abstract and its tone too heavy for kids' television. Parents complained that it was confusing, too serious, and at times unsettling. Then there was the behind-the-scenes drama. Disputes between Marvel and the network over creative direction led to constant battles about how far the show could push. Storylines about Galactus, Thanos, and cosmic destruction were watered down or cut entirely, leaving the series in limbo. Despite being visually stunning, the show lasted just one season. Fans, however, saw its ambition. It was one of the rare superhero cartoons that dared to ask bigger questions, even if it left some audiences scratching their heads. The controversy, ironically, cemented its cult status. Today, Silver Surfer is remembered as the what-if of superhero animation, proof that sometimes going too far ahead of your time can cut a great series short. Young Justice 2010 to 2013. When Young Justice premiered, it was everything fans had been craving: sharp writing, character depth, and serialized storytelling that respected its audience. But almost immediately, it found itself in the crosshairs of controversy. Networks struggled with its tone, which was darker and more complex than traditional Saturday morning fare. Parents complained that it felt too mature, with plots that included betrayal, secret identities, and political intrigue. What really sparked debate, though, was its cancellation. After only 2 seasons, Cartoon Network abruptly pulled the plug. Rumors flew that it was because the show wasn't selling toys, a strange reason for cutting a critically acclaimed series with a loyal fan base. Others speculated that its appeal to older teens, rather than younger children, made it harder to market. Whatever the truth, the cancellation became a lightning rod for fan outrage. The controversy didn't end there. Years later, demand from fans revived the series on streaming platforms, where it leaned even harder into mature storytelling. Young Justice proved that controversy could not only spark outrage, but also fuel a movement strong, enough to bring a show back from the dead. Captain Planet and the Planeteers, 1990 to 1996. Superhero cartoons usually save cities from colorful villains. Captain Planet and the Planeteers tried something different: saving the Earth itself. The show handed 5 kids magical rings tied to natural elements, with their powers combining to summon Captain Planet. On paper, it was educational entertainment. In practice, it became one of the most debated cartoons of its era. Parents and pundits quickly accused it of being too preachy, claiming it pushed environmental agendas onto kids. Episodes openly tackled pollution, corporate greed, and even global disasters. Critics felt it was less about fun and more about messaging. Some kids loved it. Others rolled their eyes at the constant reduce, reuse, recycle reminders. Despite the backlash, it was a hit, with celebrity guest voices and a theme song that remains lodged in pop culture memory. The controversy made it a lightning rod. Was it propaganda, or was it planting seeds of awareness? Either way, Captain Planet made sure kids of the 90s would never forget the phrase, "The power is yours." Spawn, the animated series, 1997 to 1999. If most superhero cartoons were accused of being too safe, Spawn went to the other extreme. Airing on HBO, this wasn't a Saturday morning show. It was unapologetically dark, graphic, and aimed squarely at adults. The series followed Al Simmons, a fallen soldier turned anti-hero, navigating betrayal, corruption, and supernatural forces. From the start, it caused waves. Parents who stumbled onto it expecting a typical superhero cartoon were shocked by its intensity. Critics debated whether it was art or exploitation. Unlike other shows that danced around censorship, Spawn embraced the freedom of late-night cable, with storylines that pushed boundaries far beyond what children's animation had ever attempted. The controversy made it a cult hit. While mainstream audiences weren't always sure what to make of it, animation fans praised its ambition and storytelling. It was proof that cartoons didn't have to be just for kids, and that superheroes could be grim, flawed, and unsettling. Love it or hate it, Spawn carved out its own legacy as one of the most polarizing animated series ever made. Superhero cartoons may be drawn in bright colors, but as we've seen, they often stir up debates darker than any villain's lair. Whether accused of being too violent, too silly, too political, or too risky, these shows proved that capes and controversy go hand in hand. Now here's the question for you. Which of these cartoons do you think deserved the outrage, and which ones were unfairly judged? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more deep dives into the animated world of heroes.